Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a special season review episode of Shouting into the Void series review, I should say.
We've done it again.
We're not in America, or we're not watching Classic Who, so it's series. We've watched a whole other series. Series 3 is done and dusted. That now means what, 20, 40 odd episodes ish, isn't it? 3 series is worth.
The 39 for series plus the specials, so
yeah, 40-ish.
Like 41, I think.
Oh, lovely, almost dead on. Oh, and it's been a wild ride, I think.
It certainly has.
So this video will follow the same format as the other ones. We got some 3 positives of the series and 3 negatives, as well as our favorite episodes, our least favorite episodes, and some stats for what we discussed the rest of the way through in the previous videos, which you can go and have a look at. But we'll start with sort of your overall thoughts for series 3. How did you think it went?
How do you think this went? It feels like a performance review.
Yeah, basically is.
I think I try too hard.
Yeah,
but yeah, I care too much. I enjoyed the series overall.
Mm-hmm.
I think not as fondly. I look back on it now, but there's some really great stuff in there, obviously, and we will talk about it.
Yeah.
I think it's an improvement on series 2.
Yes,
I would say I probably got more enjoyment out of it. Still not up there with series 1 for me just yet, but I think series 4 is going to be some serious competition for series 1. Hopefully. Snap. You're not allowed to talk for the rest of this, so welcome to Shouting into the Void. No, you spoke.
Oh, we're not getting any Kenobi trailer now.
But yeah, I enjoyed it. You know, we had our core characters gave great performances throughout. I don't want to kind of spoil all my positives really, but we had some great characters throughout the entire series, and even the episodes I may not have enjoyed as much, you know, there was some merit to them. I do think there was a bit of a slog, but you know, every episode did have its merits. I didn't utterly despise basically everything about it. Looking at you, Long Game.
Loving Monsters, although to be fair,
Loving Monsters,
his Fear is the worst one. Let's be clear.
You,
yeah.
For you, God, that feels like so long ago we were doing those 2.
It was.
I suppose it was quite a while ago. It was at least like 13, 14 weeks ago, I suppose. But yeah, I enjoyed it overall. I would probably put it snap bang in the middle of what we've watched thus far, series wise. But yeah, it was a strong series. I think it started out very strong. I think it dipped in the middle. Then we had an incredible run in like the last kind of quarter. Maybe a little dip again at the end, but overall, you know, they gave it a good go, and I think they were more successful than they weren't. So well done, series 3.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. I say this series has always sort of been a popular one for me. I think rewatching it and sort of maybe paying attention to it a bit more has probably put it a little bit down in my estimates, because, you know, sometimes I just had it on in the background and look through it for a nostalgic lens, but sort of rewatching it for this purpose and sort of dissecting it a little bit more, I think it's come up with some more problems. But yeah, that being said, it's better than series 2. I think in most aspects, you know, there are improvements in this. There are less dud episodes. And as you mentioned, at least the episodes that are duds have some, you know, we didn't really struggle for positives as much. Whereas with, you know, Fear Her, Love and Monsters, Idiot's Lantern, you know, we kind of struggled a little bit for the positives of series 2. Yeah, unfortunately, it's not at the level of series 1 yet. But as you mentioned, series 4 might get there, hopefully, from what I can remember. But yeah, I think series 3 is a good introduction to some new things. I think it's a good settling season for David Tennant in the role. And yeah, I think it kind of cleans the slate as well, which I think is what was needed after series 2, with how that sort of ended and the sort of ties over from the Ninth Doctor and all that kind of jazz. I will.
Thank God we're over all that Rose business, eh?
I know, right?
Glad that's done.
I mean, I was going to sort of say, you know, I know at the sort of start we were, or at least I was concerned that Rose would overshadow like the whole series. I sort of thought, I haven't put it in the positives or the worst, but I thought that there was much less Rose influence than I thought there was.
Yeah, I agree. I think the first, definitely the first half of the series, I was like, ugh. But there wasn't as much, there's nowhere near as much as I thought there was in the second half.
No, there's like a reference in Utopia and a reference in The Sound of Drums, and a tiny, no, not in Sound of Drums, the last Time Lords, but they're like one mention. It's not like a big plot point like it kind of was in Shakespeare Code and Gridlock and that kind of thing. Which is good. Like I said, it sort of cleans the slate. It's a palate cleanser, series 3, I think, for series 4, which isn't a bad thing, And again, you might think differently. If series 3 is your favorite ever series, good for you. You're happy. If you're happy with that, that's fine. You're allowed to enjoy things more than we enjoy some things. Everything is subjective. So yeah, don't let our thought process, disenfranchise you from yours. I think it's one. I know, right? Pulled that out the hat. But yes, we do start with our positives of series 3, as we do with the individual episodes. So this covers from, I've not included the Christmas special because it's, I don't really see it's a separate thing for the series is. But if you turn around and say your best part is the Christmas special, then who am I to disagree?
My favorite thing is Donna about series 3.
Yeah, could you imagine? But yeah, so for me, it goes from Smith and Jones all the way through to The Last of the Time Lords, but technically the Runaway Bride is part of series 3, depending where you look. So with that being said, of 14 episodes, what is your favorite part?
Martha Jones.
Same.
Freema Agyeman.
Yeah.
I love her. Freema's fantastic in the role. She gives a great performance throughout. And her story arc, I think, in this series as well. I wish they had done something a bit different in terms of, quite a love angle. But, again, it didn't over-dominate, particularly in the second half. In the end, she kind of broke away from it. It's why she chose to leave. And yeah, I just like seeing her feel like she probably wasn't quite enough as a companion and fighting to get those keys until halfway through the series. And then by the end of it, she's like, well, I said the word of my own, bitch, you're an old man. And then you were like a little Yoda thing.
Even older man.
Yeah, even older man than your real age. And she can be like, well, I do have a place now, and it's not with you. It's I can be a doctor to
with Reggie
my
Yates.
family and with Reggie Yates. I can look after my family and help them through all this trauma and stuff. And yeah, I just really enjoyed how she kind of brought a breath of fresh air, I think, to the series after, things got very romantically complicated with Rose and stuff, and her departure was all very sad. But I do think Martha's a fantastic companion. I think she's very underrated. I think the last couple of years, I think she has kind of gained a lot more praise in the fandom, which has been very nice to see. But yeah, Freema was fantastic, and I really enjoyed Martha. And I look forward to seeing they hopefully don't ruin her in series 4 when she comes back, but I don't think they do. So yeah, she was easily my favorite part of all of this. I loved what she brought to the role. I loved Martha in basically all the episodes, and her arc was really well done. So yeah,
that's fair enough. I think she especially had the big shoes to fill of Rose's departure, especially in terms of the fans. I know a lot of fans still see sort of Rose as the pinnacle of companion, even though I would argue that she's more towards the bottom end than the top. But again, everyone's entitled to their views. But even at the time, everyone was like, "Oh, it's the same sort of thing when a doctor regenerates and they get a new doctor in. There's always the big shoes to fill." And she does make the role her own, as you sort of mentioned. The romance sort of subplot is a bit of a shame, especially because it's kind of just brushed off and not too much comes of it. It doesn't really have any plot relevance. You don't really have to have that in the finale to say, whatever, because there's a reason why she leaves, and it's not because she realizes the doctor won't be with her or whatever. Which is, it's fine that's in there. It doesn't detract too much. And I think it helps that Freema Agyeman can sort of play off that role anyway. And you do see her evolve as well from a quite confident, medical student to literally someone that will save the world single-handedly, which sets her in good stead for her journey into the rest of the Doctor Who universe, whether that's series 4 of Doctor Who or Torchwood.
She was going to be in Sojourn Adventures.
Yeah, I know, it's terrible.
It's really lost.
And yeah, I think she is one of the better companions, I think, of New Who. Although, again, to be fair, I don't really dislike any of the companions other than Rose. But
I can think of one.
Bill? Oh, Nardole. I was like, it's not Bill. Oh, yes. The best companion ever, you dislike.
Well, of course. So natural.
Again, it's subjective. It's fine. You're wrong, but it's fine. Yes.
That's not what's subjective.
Martha and Freeman Regiment are definitely the best bit of series 3. They stand out enough. They don't fade into the background. They get enough development. And you do feel like they go on the journey with the Doctor, and that they can hold their own and they can be independent, which I think was something that Rose necessarily wasn't in both of her series. Martha is great, and so is Freema, and I hope they return to the show at some point in the future, if possible.
If New Amsterdam gets cancelled,
but it won't. No. But she's doing Big Finish now, so she is in. They are getting her back in the universe in some ways, which is good. It's good to have these cast members return in some form. So, what is your second positive for the series?
I've gone for the original villains that series 3
Lazarus
introduced to us. No,
the Sun.
I've written down like the negative ones, but I've more than not. Mm-hmm. The original villains have been fantastic. I think we had the Jadoon. I really like the Carrier Knights as well. Mm-hmm. We had the Family of Blood and all of them. We had the Scarecrows. We had the Weeping Angels. We had the Toclafane. All of that jazz. I think they're all incredibly, incredibly strong. Yes, we had the Stabs. Yes, we had Lazarus. Yes, we had Corwin. Yes, we had the Future Kind. Yes, we had the Pig Slaves. But I think when they really got it right, they nailed it. And I was kind of looking back at like some of the original villains from like series 2 and series 1. I'm like, I do feel like series 3 really brought it with the newer unseen before villains. A lot of them are still very well looked upon today. I mean, the Weeping Angels are currently appearing in Doctor Who as it's airing right now. So, I think they have a very fantastic range of different villains. The Jadoon, very animalistic based, and then Carrier Knights, the traditional witches, kind of the Doctor Who twist on them. Family and Blood and Scarecrows, Weeping Angels, they are quite scary and they have a good presence. They kind of steal the show, I think, of their respective episodes that they're in. Iconic imagery from all of them, really. The Toclafane, very like childish, and again a different kind of design compared to all the others. It feels very creative and very unique when you if you put them on a lineup, you'd be like, oh damn. So I really enjoyed how they treated some of the more original villains. It wasn't the Isolus, it wasn't the Absorbaloff.
Yes.
It wasn't the Mighty Jagrafess. We actually had some really good showings, I think. The Holy Hadrajasic Maxarodenfoe.
Yeah, Max.
Because I'm a nerd. But yeah, and also I just stared at the Battles in Time card for God knows how long when I was a kid, probably.
Fair enough.
And of course, there's that blooper of Simon Pegg being unable to say it.
Yeah.
So that just kind of got it in my head. But yeah, we did have some flops, and believe me, when they flopped, they flopped. I'm looking at you, Slabs, in particular. Got you shit. But the original villains of Series 3, for the most part, I thought were really, really great.
Yep, I definitely agree. A lot, as you mentioned, they continue on now with the Weeping Angels and things like that. A lot of them are like standalone, can't return type things. Like the Family of Blood and the Scarecrows and the Toclafane. The Jadoon are also another one that stick around for a while. Even if they're technically not villains, because they're in theory not the bad guys.
Yeah.
But I do get what you mean. And I think it's the ones that look the most iconic as well. I think the look of all the new villains helps sell them. Big Rhino, spooky statue, scarecrows. it does sell a lot. It sells the believability of them, I think. And yeah, I do agree. And I mean, there's not too many returning villains either in this series, which I think helps. Obviously, you've got the Daleks and the Master, but they didn't have to sort of reintroduce that sort of many. Although I guess series 2 they reintroduced the Cybermen. Was that about it?
Yeah.
I mean, the Daleks came back, but
I suppose we also had the Mac with this series, but they were basically non-existent.
Yeah, but it doesn't have the sort of the fact of like series 1 where everything is brand new and everything has to be reintroduced.
Everything's back for the first time. Yeah.
Which is good. And I also think that pays off. My second point a little bit more. I've gone for the Master and his triumphant return. Sort of with the fact that there's not that many recurring or returning villains, I think it gives the impact of sort of the Master coming back a bigger surprise, because you're kind of not thinking that, who are they going to bring back next type thing.
Yeah.
Which is similar to what happens in Jodie Whittaker's second series, because you're not expecting the Master to come back because there's not been that many references to past Doctor Who, so it's even more of a surprise. But saying that, John Sim, as we mentioned in the 3-part finales, he's excellent throughout in every episode, no matter which episode it is he's in. He's definitely one of the standouts. He brings a lot to the role, and there's not really much else I can add to what I've spoken about in the past 3 weeks. He's just, I think he definitely adds the charm and the seriousness that the role needed at the time. And he's gone on to come back and reprise the role a couple of times, and in my personal view, I think they're just as good. And he's obviously cemented himself in Doctor Who as one of the favorites masters for the show. I mean, everyone has their favorite, but obviously with this being the first that a lot of people would have watched at the time, it was also a lot of pressure for him, because he knows he has to appease the older fans of the older masters and newer fans that don't know who he is. He's given a lot to work with, especially in the sound of drums. He's given a sort of depth as well, where it's more, especially in sound of drums, it's more than kind of I'm evil for evil's sake. It seems like he's being driven to this by the drums in his head, which does get explained later on. And yeah, I just think he's great throughout. And it's a kind of a shame we didn't get more of him and David Tennant, which we mentioned last week. But I can kind of look past that, knowing that we do get that moving forwards. And obviously we also get him and Peter Capaldi, which is another good dynamic that I quite like. But yeah, I mean, if you want to hear more about my thoughts on The Master, by all means, go and watch the videos for the past 3 weeks, because I think he gets a mention in pretty much all of them. But yeah, and even like Derek Jacobi, very briefly as the Master, was also
he's really great.
And it's a shame we didn't get more of him, but I get why, because they kind of wanted to match actors with David Tennant to kind of have the literal parallel. Which I think is fair. But yes, what is your third?
The supporting characters.
Interesting.
I was looking through all my notes, and the most common positive I had from all the episodes of the series were the supporting characters. I was like, you know what? You're goddamn right, Liam. Well done, past Liam. So yeah, we had Shakespeare, we had Brannigan and all the other people in the cars. We had Frank and Solomon, Mr. Diagoras, Tallulah, Laszlo, I guess. Yeah. We had Riley from 42, like the only good thing about that episode. We had the family of Blood. We had Sally Sparrow and Larry. We had Professor Yana. We had Chantho. We had Captain Jack. We had the Master. So many great kind of additional characters this series that I really, really enjoyed. And again, I think it's just probably the strongest showing of supporting characters we've probably had so far in a series. So yeah, I really enjoyed kind of a lot of the, whether they're one-offs like Shakespeare or whatever, or the Master showed it multiple times. Family Blood, the 2-parters themselves, or the Diets of Manhattan lot. They have a bit more time to develop, obviously. But yeah, they really stood out to me. And I think I wanted to kind of give it a shout, because I think it's not something I've often considered about Series 2. It's just how great a lot of like the guest cast are in a lot of the episodes. And they really do great stuff with it as well. Some really cool like historical figures, and then a literal cat person. There's a lot of range in them again, just like the kind of original villains. A whole kind of host of fun supporting villains or allies, depending on the story. And yeah, I've kind of, most of them I did praise in the individual episodes when we talked about them, so I don't want to go into depth about every single one of them. Especially the Dark Two-Part where I talked about the supporting characters a lot, and the Family of Blood, obviously. So yeah, we had a great kind of dynamic, not just around the Doctor and Martha. When other people were on screen, you could also get a lot of enjoyment out of it for the most part. Not all of them, as we will talk about, but for the most part, again, like we had a whole host of really great supporting characters this series.
Yeah, I agree, definitely. There's at least one standout supporting cast member, I'd say, from every episode, pretty much, which is good. You want your supporting cast, whether they're famous or not, or well known. You want them to stand out in the show, because why are you, in theory, paying them a little bit extra to get them on for an episode if they're not going to perform well? Which is why, even like in The Long Game, Simon Pegg's still a pretty good choice. Peter Kay, however, is perhaps the opposite of of the scales. But yeah, I think everyone in this whole series it adds a lot. Even if we're talking about the Christmas special, Donna, if she's cast as a supporting cast member, even Lance, as much of a dick he is, is still a memorable character. And there's a number of people in this that go on to do bigger and better things. Andrew Garfield is obviously in Spider-Man, gone on to have a very successful Hollywood acting career. The actor that plays Jeremy Baines, obviously Harry Lloyd.
Harry Lloyd, yeah.
He obviously went on to Game of Thrones, and then has also had a pretty successful career, at least in like HBO dramas, which is good. So it's good to see these sort of actors come in when they're not fresh faced, but like sort of new to the scene, and then go on to have careers. We'll have it next series as well, with the likes of like Felicity Jones, who's in The Unicorn and the Wasp, who obviously went on to lead a whole Star Wars film. So that it's good that Doctor Who can be the springboard for certain careers. The biggest ones being Matt Smith and Karen Gillan as well, who were in a number of major films and franchises, which is good to see. And yeah, I think the series is pretty good for that. My sort of third one is, I know you spoke about monsters overall, but the Weeping Angels.
Okay, nice.
Specifically. I just think that they, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say they became one of the most sort of iconic Doctor Who villains of all time, taking into account Classic Who as well. Mainly because they use on like every promotional thing. Every time they need to bring out something that's not the main show, they're like, let's get the Weeping Angels in.
They're on every lunchbox in 2008, I think.
Yeah. And it is because they're quite scary. I think it helps that the episode they're in is unique in the fact that it's, a companion Doctor Light one. It's quite a scary one. Which, although Doctor Who's sort of been tongue-in-cheek, hide behind the sofas, I think this was one that actually did make people go, hang on a minute, that's a bit spooky.
Hang on a minute.
Wait a minute.
That's the most British reaction to being scared.
Hang
on a minute.
That was me during a quiet place. Hang on.
I can't even speak during a quiet place.
Oh no, that's fair. But yeah, I think the Weeping Angels are just the idea of them, and the fact that it can be anything, and any statue you see could come to life at any point. The fact that your defense is looking at them, and that we're humans, we can't keep our eyes open for a very long time. There is, you're going to have to stop looking at some point, which is what I think adds to the sort of terrifying scale of them. I do sort of have issues with the episode, but I think it's more of an issue with the series than necessarily specific that episode, which I'll come on to. But I don't think the Weeping Angels aren't at fault for that. And we don't see them again now for another couple of series, and then after that we don't see them again for another couple of series, so they use pretty sparingly as well, which I think helps stop them becoming diluted and overdone. Which is why when they're back this series 13 that's currently airing, is why a lot of people get excited and they're like, what's going to happen, because
hang on a minute,
such a long time. So they're great. I think, although a lot of the new villains are good, the fact that these sort of come in and they stand out and they stand the test of time as well, I think really adds to them more than anything. But yeah, have you got any other positive points?
David Tennant was good. Well done, David.
Yes, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, he's not in the best and worst because he wasn't. I don't think he was the best of series 3. I think we speak about this throughout sort of this our reviews. You know, I think there are some episodes where either he's not given enough to do, therefore you don't see him enough, or there are some moments where he kind of is a little bit out of character. You know, I think Shakespeare Code, there's a little bit of some moments in there. Utopia, when he kind of turns around and snaps at both of them. You know, there's bits where he's not quite the Doctor, but obviously David Tennant, his acting throughout was great, epitomized by, you know, Family of Blood, and that two-parter. But unfortunately, there are just some things that were better than him. And we'll see if that's the case for next series as well. Also, a special shout out to the music, because I did quite like the soundtrack to series 3, and its use of real music as well, especially in the series finale. Doctor doesn't do it very often, but when it does, it's often quite memorable. Looking at you, Toxic from End of the World.
Yes.
Classic.
Oh boy.
So now we have the terrible task of moving on to our worsts. I'll go on first because I have to edit this and it's going to be very annoying for me to find pictures to to show this.
Okay.
But just like, and we touched on it on a few episodes, it's the conveniences around some of the plot points.
Right.
I think I found myself saying that a lot this series, is that it was very convenient that they did this, or convenient that happened. I think Blink's the example where, you know, it's convenient that the Weeping Angel threw the rock instead of just zapping her to the past. It's convenient she decided to rip the paper. It's convenient that the Master can make the paradox machine. It's convenient that the Doctor time locked it to Earth at that point. Well, I guess it's not convenient that Tish got the job at the other places, but you know, it's convenient that the Doctor turned up to go to that event in the first place. I mean, it's convenient the Doctor turns up anywhere and something's going on. But you know, there's just moments that sort of I can suspend my disbelief for most of them, so it's not a big thing, and it's only when you sort of go in and you think about it a bit more. You know, it's convenient that the witches didn't then pick up Shakespeare's voodoo doll again and start knocking him out, even though that voodoo doll just disappeared into thin air and went somewhere. Yeah, so it's not a major thing, but it's just, I feel like the writing sometimes was a case of, oh yeah, and then they just did this because they could, you know, or this just happened to be there. Which maybe it's always been like that. We just didn't notice it in series 1 and 2 as much. It'll be interesting to see how much that plays into series 4. I think, as we mentioned previously, is that I think with series 4 they kind of get around it a little bit by saying that the universe is pushing Donna towards the Doctor for the Doctor Donna type thing. We'll see how that plays out and see how we feel about that, you know, at the series finale for next week.
I am nervous about that.
But yeah, I just think there was just a few too many conveniences for it to seem a bit real for me. I mean, it's sci-fi, so it's never going to be fully real anyway. But, you know, I have to suspend my disbelief a little bit more than I had to previously, which is just a bit noticeable. So what is your first worst?
The mid-series slog.
Yep. All right.
I've kind of put it around. I mean, I didn't mind the dietary part per se, but I do think the scripts were very, very messy, as and we did talk about those during that kind of episode when we covered it. And then into Lazarus Experiment, then into 42. You know, we were just waiting for human nature, let's be frank. And sorry to Frank, who was in one of these sloggy episodes. But yeah, it felt like the middle of the series. It often happens, obviously, in most shows, but it doesn't mean we can't criticize it. And I will, and I did. It was just a very, very mixed bag for me. It doesn't help that I was really looking forward to 42 and it ended up very much disappointing me. Because well, I enjoyed that one, so that'd be fine. It was only like one episode that I really, really disliked the series, but no, it was 2. So yeah, that was kind of a shame that things worked out that way, but these things happen. yeah, it just very much felt like, okay, yes, we've been there, done that. Daleks again. Okay, let's just go on to the next thing. Oh no, it's terrible. Let's go on to
Yeah,
the next thing. Oh no, this is
yeah,
disappointing. This
yeah.
isn't as good as I remember. And then we get into the good shit.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I feel like I felt it a bit more with this series than the previous ones, probably. I mean, around the middle of the series, well, obviously they had Dalek, then they had Long Game, which, but then we got Father's Day, which I love. Then we got the Empty Charity part, which I love. Um, then series two, I don't mind the Cybermen two-part mainly because I like the Cybermen, so that I can get through that fairly easily. Idiot Stanton's very meh. But then Impossible Planet two-part, which I love, and we had all that kind of shiz. So yeah, I feel like we had a very strong first couple of episodes, and then almost a bit too early into the series, I was like, oh, this is a bit. And then that carried on for about a month of us doing the series, which again doesn't have. If you're binging it, you can get the shit out of the way very quickly.
Yeah.
But the fact that we were tackling it week upon week, it just felt, I guess, very drawn out, and maybe that has something to do with it too. But yeah, for me, the middle of the series was a bit of a slog and a bit of a mixed bag compared to the start and the end. So that was kind of my big issue with it.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Yeah, there are, I think every series kind of has one or two episodes where they're a bit of a dud. Normally they come right before the finale, because that's normally when like the Doctor Light episode is, and that's normally not the best. At least it has
until series 4.
Yeah, until this one and next season. But yeah, I do agree that there is, I found myself being like, oh, I can't be bothered watching that this week because I'm like, oh, I know it's not that good, but I've got to sit through it and try and find a way. So yeah, it makes it harder for us to sit through and watch because that's 45 minutes of our time we have to dedicate just watching it, and then the hour to talk about it. Although ironically, we talk about the worst episodes longer than we talk about the best ones.
Because there's more to hate.
Yeah. But yeah, I do agree that it can, at least, especially this series, sort of, there is a bit of a oh, come on, let's get to the good one again. Especially when there's a good episode coming up as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's fair. So my sort of next worst is kind of the opposite to your original villains. Right. I've put the other original villains effectively.
Okay.
So like Lazarus is the main one I think I'd pinpoint here.
Yeah.
The pig slaves are kind of a bit weak. Pollution, I guess, in
damn pollution
and drugs, I guess. And then the sun as well is also a big sort of I just think that they hit it out of the park with so many of the good villains in this that are unique, Scarecrow, Family of Blood, Weeping Angels, that kind of thing, that it just baffles me that the same creative team will look at Lazarus and look at the pig slaves and look at the sun and think, yeah, those are good ideas. So I guess it just shows that nobody's perfect, kids. So you can do something really great and then still have a really shit idea next time. So don't take it to heart. But yeah, I think at least with the pig slaves, they look good. I think that's kind of their saving grace. Lazarus looks terrible because the CGI is not aged well. The sun is, I mean, it's the sun and it possesses people, and that doesn't look great either necessarily. And there's no, it doesn't have the iconography to be like, oh, this is what you should be scared of. It's like a guy with fire in his eyes, which doesn't stand out as much, especially in pop culture when you've got so many different things that have things coming out of their eyes. Superman, Cyclops, you've got that kind of thing, and it's not unique enough, I don't think. I think maybe if the CGI was better, Lazarus wouldn't be as bad, but there's nothing they can do with that. But again, that being said, I just don't, it's not a compelling villain because it doesn't really have a motive. It just kills because it's a monster, I guess. Yeah. While it needs to eat the life force, which is a bit like, I guess, but it's not. It's effectively then at that point just an animal that's trying to get food. It's not like it doesn't have this grand plan of world domination like a lot of the good villains do. which I think lets it down a little bit. And
it looks like a
everything
PS2 Resident Evil villain.
yeah, it is basically a Resident Evil villain. Is what it is.
The human face was a mistake.
Yes, yeah, and I mean there are other. I mean, they couldn't really build that practical effect because it would be quite tricky, but so there was no really real way of getting around it. And I think unless you do a 42 where you kind of have the sun and that's easy to make CGI, and then you just use effectively human puppets to be your villain. But it's fine. I think, as you mentioned, the good original villains and the returning villains sort of outweigh the bad ones. And even so, other than I think Lazarus, then 42, other than that two, over those back to back, you kind of have a break where there's good villains, which is fine. I think I'm not sure where I put the Carrionites. I think they're good. At least the three witches are the best part. I think the generic flying army that come out the globe look not great because of the CGI, but again, just a faceless monster. One of them CGI armies that people complain about Marvel having too many of. But yeah, I mean, the good ones outweigh the bad ones, but the bad ones are unfortunately still a negative, I think, for the series. Which I think, I mean, if not to pin it all on Lazarus, but especially Lazarus, I think he's the worst of the bunch.
He's the least favorite child.
Yes. So what is your second negative?
The Jones family.
Oh, well, that ties into my third one, because my third one is Martha, Reggie obviously. Yates.
Right.
So I'll come in on mine after. Yeah, go on.
I just don't care enough about them to even talk about them. I don't care. I didn't give a shit about any of them apart from Martha. I mean, we started off strong with Annalise, of course. Kind of tie into the family. She was worthwhile character. More screen time than Reggie Yates actually in that one episode. But
God, yeah.
Hi, Martha. Hi. But yeah, Leo did not need to be in this. I know clearly he was busy schedule-wise, and that meant he couldn't appear that much. But then why cast him if surely you'd be aware that there would have been those kind of issues, or feels weird. I hate Francine. I know she's kind of has a bit of an arc, I guess, and Cliff as well. They have a hard year. So those two are now back together, but the issues are just eventually going to reappear with those two when things settle down. So why put them back together? Strange. Tish, I think, is probably the best of the bunch, maybe outside of Martha, because she actually had something to do in the Lazarus experiment, and she had like many jobs in those couple of days. So she was a hard worker. She got unlucky with the master kind of putting her in these shitty jobs. 3 times a lady. But yeah, even then, I just don't care about it. And the fact that we only ever see Francine again, like, probably my least favorite of them all. And nothing against the actors, obviously, because I think when they were on screen, they did have some good stuff. But I just feel like a lot of it felt a bit pointless, and I'd rather just focus on Martha. They got it right with Jackie and Mickey and that kind of little family unit there. Don't know how they got it right, but they managed it somehow. I find them a lot more interesting. I think they could be bothered to take the time with those guys, I guess. They actually had like a 2-parter set on Earth where they were featured prominently, and then they would come back at the end of the series, and there'd be a big focus of Christmas specials and stuff. Obviously, Martha didn't have a Christmas special, so that's not a fair criticism, really. But even if they just cut the family down a bit, just get rid of Leo, please.
Yeah.
You just don't need him. I know a lot of people like the kind of family focus and stuff, but once they did it once with Rose, I don't care about them doing it again. I just did not connect with anyone in the family apart from Martha. So it's good that of all of them, I did connect with Martha because she's the bloody companion. But ultimately, I just feel like their role in things was completely without purpose, ultimately. Especially when they then had Jack around in the end anyway. You still had someone that, would have been on the Valiant and that Martha could have saved. They'd kind of grown attached to Utopia or whatever. But yeah, just not a big fan of the Joneses apart from Martha, I'm ashamed to say. But there you go.
That's fair, I think. I think the only one that does go on a bit of a development is Francine. But it's still not that, I guess, not that much. It's just by the end, she just accepts the doctor because she realizes that she
nods at him through a window.
Yeah.
I think it works a lot better with Sylvia, with Donna's era.
Yeah. And then Cliff has virtually nothing except dating Annalise and
midlife crisis. And getting back with his wife,
telling Martha to run. Tish, I think, at least she gets something to do in Lazarus. I think what it probably needed was the family to be in more than one episode set on Earth. Maybe if there's not really that many episodes set on present day Earth. But maybe if they were in the first episode a bit more than just at the end being a dysfunctional family. It does feel like they just had this template for a family and they're like, look, we're going to have her with this family. They're just going to be in the background. We'll cast these people.
It doesn't help for them really that from their point of view, like the big arc before the Master took over, it was literally like 2 days for them.
Yeah.
So there's not that much you can do to develop them when their storyline is basically across 3 days.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of unfair as well because we had 2 seasons with Mickey and Jackie, whereas we have to get to know this family in the space of effectively 12 episodes to care about them. At which point they still have to make engaging stories because they can't really repeat what they did with series 1. With they can't be like, oh, whoops, we're stuck on Earth. Whoops, it's been a year or whatever. Which I think was a good twist, and they don't have the oh, I need to go back in time to see my family kind of thing that Rose did. Which they, I think a lot of the tricks that we used for Rose and her family, they couldn't really use on Martha because it didn't fit more than anything. And then at least we're also, it's like you've got good family, bad family, good family with series 1, 2, 3, and 4. Because obviously Sylvia and Wilf are excellent when they come in. Next series, and although I do agree that some of the family isn't necessarily the most important thing, I think it at least adds in a layer of depth to Martha to sort of show that she has this support and this family behind her really, and that she wasn't just someone that was wandering around and then bumped into the doctor.
They had a good idea with them getting tied into Saxon and everything, and Francine like working with the mysterious sinister woman on the calls and stuff, but there wasn't time to do anything with that really. If maybe 42 had been an episode more so about that and set on Earth and they did something, some kind of alien conspiracy, and then they had that going on alongside it. I don't know, but for me this felt like a bit of a waste. And even in Stolen Earth, Francine's just kind of there. Just a bit of a spare part. So it's a shame that they are kind of sandwiched between 2 really good families, I think, in the era. But what can you do?
And then it does tie into my third because Reggie Yates is a big negative, I think, for the series. Kind of harsh to again call out one person, and it probably not necessarily his fault. If somebody comes at you and says, "Look, we'll give you this amount of money to be in Doctor Who for 5 minutes," you're not going to say no, are you? If it doesn't require you to work that much. But it's just so unnecessary. Every time he was in an episode, we were like, what was the point in him being in this episode? It's so noticeable that he's not in it as much when he's supposed to be Martha's brother. I don't know if either make him someone that, I don't know, he doesn't need to be connected to the family, but then what's the point in him being in there? I don't know, make him a friend of Martha's maybe, but it just feels a bit unnecessary that they just needed him to be like, hey, look, Reggie Yates is going to be in this episode, come and watch. And it just, when you want your guest stars to be good and to stand out, like we mentioned, but unfortunately when he appeared, he was in it, he has like 3 lines in his 3 episodes. He's not even in the finale. He's there to deliver some exposition of, oh, I'm here, and then for the Master to hijack the call. It's just a bit pointless, I think, and sort of the worst thing you can be in an episode and in a series is pointless, and unnecessary. Which unfortunately he is. Again, I guess not the actor's fault. More so, I guess, for the writers and production team for continuing to sort of shoehorn him in, even when they could have easily have tweaked the script to be like, oh, it's Tish's 21st birthday party next week, or you don't need the scene, or have when Martha's getting when the call is hijacked in The Sound of Drums, maybe have Tish not be taken yet and Martha be on the phone and hear Tish be like, oh, and then the master come on that way. You then don't need to put him in, and he doesn't need to be in, the Lazarus Experiment. Maybe have Cliff in there, and then you can have another moment between Francine and Cliff where either they're starting to hate each other, or maybe they get a bit closer again because they see Martha's in danger, or one of them gets injured and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Maybe Cliff gets injured like Leo does, and then Francine still takes care of him, and it sort of reignites the flame a little bit there. I think there's a lot you could have done if you just sort of dropped him, but unfortunately they didn't, and that's a shame for the series. Sorry,
Yes.
Reggie. So what is your final worst?
Yes. Over explanation.
Uh-huh.
I had this issue very much so with the
What
early
is this?
episodes.
Jodie Whittaker's era?
But yeah, I had that problem, I think, with the early episodes. I think the problems were written to be too much than they needed to be, and then it just got a bit convoluted and a bit like this is, it's just a bit too bonkers. You didn't need to go as much as you did. And some kind of over connectivity, I guess. Like, you didn't need to connect it all to Lazarus. All it came down is, this is why I can aid you, but maybe the laser screws over, could have just done that. I think people would have been fine with it, especially when it ties back to an Air episode anyway. And then exposition flashback central in the last couple of episodes of the series,
that's
very
the
much
main
so.
thing, yeah.
That kind of all ties into it. Just they both show us too much and tell us too much, which isn't ideal. I'd rather one or the other, but unfortunately we get both here, so it's a double whammy, I guess. So it's just, some problems I think are just overwritten and just come across as too big, and then it just feels a bit like not as cohesive as it could have been, just because there's stuff in there that really could have just been trimmed back a bit, and then that would have allowed for maybe the Jones family to actually do something. But all the all the flashbacks and stuff, we got like Face of Bo, and then the watch, and all the master stuff, blah blah blah, blah. It was a lot, and I think it was just, I think the audience are a bit smarter than what series 3 often gives them credit for, and I get it for the filthy casuals. They may need it at times, but even then it was still way too much, I think. So it was a bit much, and I think some things, just I get being excited, but maybe they went a bit too ham on some of the plot lines earlier on in the episodes, for sure. I think it was definitely overwritten, and then they just went too hard the other way with exposition, and showing us too much of what we'd already seen. And sometimes in the very same episode, they would flash back to the same moment a couple of times. It's just very strange. And that, particularly in the finale, really took me out of the story they were trying to tell. So that was kind of a big issue that I had.
Yeah, that's fair. And if you want to hear more about Liam's issues with flashbacks, go and check out the Utopia review, because boy, is there a tangent there.
I haven't rewatched that.
No, I don't watch them anyway. I watch them when I edit and I put them out. That's it. I don't touch them again. But yeah, I do agree. I think especially with the expositional flashbacks, it was just hammered home in the last episode where there's 3 or 4 different flashbacks to the doctor whispering in Martha's ear. It's like, we get it. If we didn't know the first flashback, we sure as hell know by the 4th. And even so, like, that's what previously is for. That, for this kind of thing, if you know your story is going to have relations to another episode, put in a previously. Supernatural has a previously, I think, in front of every episode, and then it just chops and changes what is necessary for the viewer to remember.
Boomtown had a previously for Aliens of London.
And so
we're coming back.
So maybe rather than just have your flashbacks in the episode, which again, they're flashbacks that only the audience sees. So it's not even for the characters on there, just put in a previously. You can still have flashbacks occasionally in the episode, but if it's big stuff, put it in the previously or create it previously. It's not that big of a deal. I don't think people are going to. People will complain, but it won't be it won't be a big deal.
Just watch the previous episode, folks.
I was going to say people won't complain, but people complain about everything. So
Doctor Who fans, certainly they will complain.
Exactly. I think that's it for our worst. Have you got any other points you want to hit on?
I think that's everything.
Excellent. So we'll sort of skip over to what we felt was our favorite and least favorite episodes. So what is the episode that you felt you enjoyed the most?
For me, probably not really surprised given what I scored it, but I think Blink was my big highlight. It's an iconic episode. Really, really enjoyed it. The Weeping Angel was obviously fantastic, as we've already talked about. And just how it all comes together, I think, in a really satisfying way. And it still lives in the hearts of the nation even now. Yeah. Even people who don't watch Doctor Who anymore will still remember the Weeping Angel one.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely adore that episode. And so the only 10 out of 10 I've given thus far. Will it be the last?
Yeah.
We'll see. But yeah, really good fun. Also shout out, I think, probably to the Family of Blood 2-parter as well. I did really enjoy that one. But if I had to go with one story, I think Blink was kind of the big standout for me with this series.
Yeah, I think for me, it's the Sound of Drums, because I think despite my sort of disappointment with Last of the Time Lords, I still, really enjoy the setup in Sound of Drums. I enjoy the interactions between our trio and the phone call with the Master in general. It all sets it up, and I think it all just works for me, I think. And I think I scored it quite highly anyway, and I think that's fair, because for me it might still be a little bit of nostalgia, but I still quite like it, and I could probably watch that episode by itself and not have to worry about watching the rest of the 3-parter. But it's just everything I think is in it. Intrigue, good characters, good supporting cast, a semi-decent action scene, decent exposition. There's very few flashbacks of like showing us things that we've seen before. You've got the exposition for Gallifrey and all that kind of stuff. So I think a lot of it just mixes together really well for me. And also a special shout out to Human Nature and Family Blood, because that is some of the, that is typically known as one of the better episodes, better storylines for Doctor Who, which I think is fair enough. And the acting is great. So what is your worst episode?
Right. I think I will go with Lazarus Experiment. Overall, I think 42 is my most disappointing episode. So I liked it, but then I watched it.
Let you down. Yeah.
It let me down, but I still really liked, Riley was a big highlight in that one, and the sequence where the Doctor gets possessed and stuff. There's still a lot of merit to that. I just don't feel as passionately about anything in the Lazarus Experiment. So I think overall that would probably be my least favorite one.
Yeah, I think for me, I have put Lazarus Experiment or 42. So I think it's literally a case of Lazarus pips it because bad monster CGI. It should have ended about 20 minutes before it did end.
Yeah.
The Doctor isn't necessarily a standout. Martha isn't necessarily a standout. Reggie Yates is in it. That's the main reason. No.
I like how you keep saying it's not the actor's fault, but he keeps specifically saying Reggie Yates instead of Leo.
Well, I mean, he took on the role, so he has some responsibility to it.
He signed the contract. It's his fault.
But then at least sort of with 42, I think David Tennant's performance in that and Martha's performance in that adds a little bit more. They're sort of better than in Lazarus, and it probably also doesn't help that they're both next to each other. Which probably compounds how bad they were. If you
they do tend to do that, don't they? They show the two really bad episodes.
Maybe that's the plan. Maybe that's what they think.
I guess so. Yeah.
But if you maybe put Blink in between, then maybe there's a gap there, or you put one and after the Human Nature 2-parter maybe, and then have those two similarly to Love Monsters and Fear Her, because there's no set way in which they put the episodes. It's up to them. They could do one half of a parter, another one, and a second half of the parter, earlier, but that's a ridiculous way to do it. Don't do that.
Be quite interesting though.
It's basically Flux is what that is. Flux is just, here's the first half, here's some other stuff, here's the second half. but with like 6 different storylines.
Yeah.
Oh, but yeah, I think Lazarus Experiment is unfortunately the worst episode of the series, and I think that probably gets reflected in our scores.
Yeah.
Well,
So.
speaking of scores, I believe Liam has compiled our statistics
Ooh, boy.
from the series, because obviously every episode we rate out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we dipped below 5, did we, this series?
We did not.
Yeah, there you go. So that already
I think
beats
that's a
series 2.
first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Even series 1 had a 4.
Well, I guess before we do actual statistics, what are you giving series 3 out of 10?
Well, I think it's definitely better than series 2. I feel like I probably gave series 2 like a 6 or something, I imagine. Mm-hmm. I would go for maybe, let's think of the episode. Smith and Jones, good. Yeah. It's actually a good look.
In theory, there's only 2 bad episodes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'll go maybe 7.5.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, 7.5 for myself as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah, again, it's, if those two episodes were maybe not next to each other, or they were just slightly better, it could push it to an 8. And again, I think both of us have had our first, this is going to be great, and then disappointments, which I also think sort of hampers it a little bit.
Yeah.
But yes, so that's what we think. Now,
let's see what we actually scored it.
What did our statistics say?
Let's have a look here. Right. So yeah, you had a clear least favorite. Lazarus Experiment was 5. Because you even gave 42 a 5.5. So
yeah,
you've got a clear least favorite there. I also gave Lazarus Experiment 5. That's my least favorite. And on average of both our scores, Lazarus Experiment and 42 are the worst, with a score of 5 on average.
Surprise.
Whoopsie. Best on average for us, I believe, talking an individual episode.
Blink, surely.
It's Blink, yeah, 9.5 on average. I gave it 10, you gave it a 9.
Okay.
And then let's have a look at 2-parters, shall we? Dinosaur Manhattan 6.75 and 6.25, both those parts. So fairly average for that one.
6.25. Is that our first 2.5? Is that you?
I gave it a 6, you gave it a 6.5.
Oh, there you go then.
For Evolution of the Daleks. Human Nature Family of Blood 8.25 and then 9. So that performed very strongly. That was easily the highest scored 2-parter for us on average. And then Utopia 8.5 on average. Sound of Drums 7.5. Last of the Time Lord 6.75. So the average of that kind of close, but easily Human Nature Family of Blood did the best. Multi-part story-wise for us. And then Blink succeeded that. Your average scores overall went to 7.1 out of 10. So not far off.
Yeah.
And mine on average, mine on average is 7.2 out of 10.
Oh, well, there you go then.
Just a bit ahead.
Yeah.
And if we compare that to series 2, you gave it an average of 6.9. And I gave it 6.9 as well. So on average, we did score it better than
which I think it's fair.
Surprising no one. So series 3 is slap bang in the middle of the 3 series so far for us. And if you talk about individual scores, obviously maximum of 10 for each episode, including Runaway Bride, is out of 140. You gave it 100 out of 140 on the dot.
Nice.
And I gave it 100.5 out of 140.
100.5.
Yeah. So that for you is a 3.5 increase of scores from series 2.
Woo. Yeah.
Woohoo! And for me, increase of 3.
Nice.
So considering averages and stuff, it's actually quite significantly better, really.
Yeah.
The fact that a whole ass average of 14 episodes can go up by 3 is really quite impressive. So yeah, that's that. And if we would put both our averages together, I suppose we could do that, couldn't we? It's 7.16 out of 10 with both our average scores for series 3. So I think our guesstimates were pretty on the money, really.
When asked in the street, what are you rating out of 10? 7.5 is fair. But if we were to think about it and watch the episodes, we'd probably knock it down a half point.
Yeah, and then the average score would be 100.25 out of 140.
Lovely.
So I feel like we're we're fairly accurate with our views, and
Yes.
we stood by them.
Yeah, it does seem that
We're
way.
not hypocrites.
No, definitely not. I'm
Yeah.
sure you
What did we
couldn't
give?
pinpoint them.
Yeah, because series 1 for you was you gave 7.6 overall, so it's
Yeah.
not that far behind.
No, no.
I gave it an 8 overall in average.
Yeah.
So,
I think I can be a bit too harsh on my maybe scoring out of 10. I think what I've realized, because sometimes I'm like, yeah, this was good. Like, yeah, I'm sometimes like, yeah, this is very good. Now give it a 9.
6.
Yeah, yeah. And then some I'm like, this is bad. 6. So I think I need to maybe readjust and recalibrate my scoring for moving forwards. But I'll have a think and see what it is, and maybe that means adjusting some ratings. But who knows? The
I
whole
stand
point
by
is,
my scores. Come at me, internet.
I mean, they'll probably be around the same, and it'll just be, it's like adjusting for inflation. It's effectively
Yeah.
just moving them back or down.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's sort of everything really. Is there anything else you want to say on series 3 before we wrap it up?
No.
It
was a good series.
Yes.
Long may it continue.
I
don't think there's a bad series of Doctor Who. So
no,
it's not
definitely.
like singing its praises by any means. But it was better than series 2.
Yes.
So we're on the up. And let's see how series 4 fares in my estimations. Hopefully it doesn't do a 42 on me.
Oh, could you imagine? Every episode is just worse than you thought. No.
Oh my god. No.
But yes, I think that's it for series 3 then. We will see you in a few weeks, Martha Jones. And that means that next episode we're moving into series 4 with Voyage of the Damned. This episode sees the Doctor companionless once again. We technically pick off after the episode, after the last of the tunnels is finished, technically, although there is a comic relief special in between, which is in a weird time bubble or whatever. But we just missed that. And then the Doctor is on board what he thinks is the Titanic, but it turns out it's a space Titanic, which is visiting Earth because it's Christmas. This is the Christmas special of 2008, I think it is, isn't it?
2007.
So, yes, 2007, so it's almost 15 years old now that we're getting to it. I remember watching this one in Christmas. Oh God, what a throwback! But it's going to be slightly festive. We're going to be mid-November when we watch it. Getting into the Christmassy spirit.
It's the most festive Christmas special could have been for us so far. It's like Christmas Invasion. Yeah. We did that in like March or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the least Christmassy month of all.
Runaway Bride, middle of summer. Oh no. But yes, this one sees Kylie Minogue as a guest star. And it's the episode where I will bring up and I will dig out somewhere the amazing interview from Doctor Who magazine with
that guy just died as well.
Yeah, Mr. Copper?
Mr. Copper, yeah.
I'll dig out his interview with the Doctor Who magazine, which is
absolutely
an excellent read. And if I can link it in that, I will.
Miserable.
We'll come to that. But what are your sort of memories and thoughts of Voyage of the Damned?
I'm very excited to check it out again. With anticipation and with bated breath, dare I say, I've always considered it one of my favorite Christmas specials. So we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah.
So 42 was one of my favorites of series 3, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I really enjoy Astrid. I remember all the fan theories about her being the TARDIS going around because Astrid is
not yet.
So they're like, oh my god, it's gonna be the TARDIS. It wasn't. She was Stardust instead. But yeah, everyone dies really.
Except for the people that you hate, they live.
Yeah, that's the point, I guess. Sure, why not? Happy Christmas, everyone. But yeah, I remember really liking it. I think the idea of it setting on like a Titanic spaceship is very unique. We also obviously get Alonso. Oh yeah, Shipman Frame's first appearance prior to banging Jack.
Implied banging, yes.
Yes, of course. Yeah, sorry, it's probably Ed before
Torchwood.
Yeah, if it was a torture episode,
Yeah,
my
definitely,
God,
yeah.
can you imagine? Oh God. Yeah, Yanto would have been there too. But
Oh.
yeah, I like the Heavenly Host. I think they're a really cool, neat idea.
Mhm. What about Max
The
Capricorn?
I was just gonna say the main villain is probably what lets it down for me.
Mhm.
But my name is Max. Ding! The fact that actually
Really
dings
does
in real
that,
life.
yeah.
Oh God.
Oh god.
But regardless, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing it. I remember really liking it.
Yeah.
I think it is very different. And yeah, I think it's going to be a shame watching I'm the doctor, I'm a 900-year-old in the conversation, because that speech is fucking everywhere now.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really like hold much weight anymore because they just use it for
It's
everything.
just so cringe now. Ugh.
Yeah,
That's the
it's
problem.
just
It's just
so
cringe.
normie, just
Yeah.
normalized
It's
now.
like when people say Alonzi and Geronimo, I'm like, ugh. It's just so
Yeah.
cringe. Stop it.
Stop it.
Yeah. Sorry.
Um, but yeah, sorry if
Sorry,
you do
fans
say
of
that.
Doctor Who. Yeah.
Yeah, we're not real Doctor Who fans,
No,
obviously.
clearly we don't say the catchphrases.
No, but yeah, I'm looking forward to checking it out. Hopefully it does hold up in my regard.
Yeah.
If nothing else, we have Banner Capolata, who is a delight.
Mhm.
So yeah,
And we
I'm
always
excited to
have
see
the
what I think of
interview
it.
as well.
Yes, and it's the first appearance of Wilf, even though they
Yes,
didn't know
it
that's who he
is.
was going to be at the time. But that's a nice little scene as well. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to see Fake Queen going, "Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Doctor," with a
Merry
corgis.
Christmas." Yeah, I'm excited to check it out. Hopefully it'll be a good time. I'm very in the Christmassy mood, so I think I might, that probably will influence a bit of my enjoyment. I might enjoy it maybe more than I should because I'm like excited for Christmas, but we will see. It's Christmas. So yeah,
Yes,
excited.
yeah, it is very sort of action movie, this one, I think, which does set it apart from a lot of the other, it's Christmas special, I guess, and Doctor Who episodes in general. It's very sort of Poseidon adventure, Titanic-esque, obviously, the film Titanic, that is. And yeah, I'm just excited to see what I spot that turns out not to be great, because I think a lot of what we've done, we watch something and go, oh, hang on a minute, that's not as great. So I'm excited to see. Wow, I'm interested to see what we point out, and eventually ruin the experience for myself, as I do with when we keep overanalyzing these.
As we've always done, yeah.
But it's fine. I'm excited. I'm in the Christmas mood. So look forward to that at some point next week. And yeah, keep an eye out for other videos that pop up on the channel. Obviously series 13 is currently ongoing, so keep an eye out for those videos. And yeah, we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.